Welcome back to some more Create Integrated. Last episode was a pretty major milestone with us getting access to infinite lava. And not only getting access to infinite lava, but making our own faster infinite lava source in our own area. But this is definitely a slow burn. It is going to take a while for this to build up, but it is building up one lava source block at a time. 10,000 source blocks to be exact. And you would think with this, my next step would be to get a mass steam engine set up so that way we can produce a ton of stress. But not just yet. I want to wait until this pit is completely filled. So until then, I think it's going to be water wheels. But hear me out, there's a lot of other ways we can use this lava in the future too that allows us to produce sort of stress on demand. I'll get into that much later, but as of right now, I have bigger plans than just getting this lava set up. This is going to be our first time diving into industrial create. Yes, we are going to be building our first factory. And what's this factory going to be for? Well, iron mostly. Well, like I said, mostly because we are also going to be producing sand, also clay, and the goal is to also produce gravel from this. Yeah, all of those sort of byproducts. And technically even flint. Now, to make the process of clearing out some land, which is what we're about to do, even easier, well, I am going to need to level up. So I do have some experience from all of our ore processing, and I'm kind of looking for a very specific enchant. I need efficiency, and wow, we got Fortune 3 in efficiency. I already have another pickaxe with Fortune 3 on it. So you know what? I'm just going to take this pickaxe and this one, combine it together. That'll be Fortune. And I've already gotten my Silk Touch set up with efficiency 5 as well. We're looking pretty good. And I also have my my scoop over here. Yeah, that one's at efficiency 5 too. They're just unfortunately missing mending at the moment, but we could probably grind out a mending book from a villager. Maybe. Now, thankfully, when rolling villagers, it's quite easy. We can just keep cycling trades until we find the one that we want. And it makes it just a whole lot easier being able to do it within here instead of just breaking the lectern over and over again. And there we go. I mean, 12 emeralds for this whole setup here is not too bad. And it's actually discounted for 9 because of the gear we're wearing. So I will be sure to take a few of these. I need at least 3 to be able to cover our main tools. Not really worried about an axe. Yeah, and we'll just get all of this applied on here. Oh, things are looking really good now. Like getting like Fortune 5 on any tool, even if it's vanilla tool, feels like an achievement every time. And then putting that mending on there, oh, just sets the deal. And mending is insanely powerful with Create because we have these like experience nuggets, right? And we can put like a tool in our offhand. And when we click these, it repairs our tools. Like that's why it's so good to have. Now with the tools in hand, I want to build the little factory over here, and it doesn't have to be that big. We are going to need a lot of space for the water wheels that are going to get us up and running at first, but I think getting started with this path area over here is going to be really nice. I plan on having multiple factories lined up all within this space over here. This is sort of going to be like my industrial center. Yeah, this entire area over here. Now I've started laying out the path using the trusted old trowel, but this massive area over here, which is about 41 blocks, technically 42 blocks long, I believe. But the whole center area here is about 41 blocks from center point to center point. This I do want to also randomize because I want this to be sort of the foundation of everything and like the working space, the industrial platform, so you can call it. The ground, essentially. And before I start building any sort of buildings, I would like to have at least the base, like sort of area sort of built up. And to do this, normally I'd have to place down all these blocks randomly using some sort of mod or using that trowel. But we could, in a mass area like this, we can use our construction sticks. And if you set a keybind to it, you should be able to open up this menu here for the construction sticks. And one of the cool modes of the construction sticks is this right here. Random place. And then we also have matching, and you can set it to any. If you do this, it is going to randomize the items that are inside of my hotbar. We also want in the mode to restrict this side to, I think, left and right. So that way it doesn't place down underneath. And when we do this, look at what this does. This will then take the items out of my hotbar and we'll randomize it. And then I do have some other item stacks that are in here that are being auto refilled, which is kind of nice. But there we go. And I don't know if construction sticks pulls from my backpack. It looks like it does. I think it's pulling from the backpack. Like, it's pulling from somewhere. Like, this is pretty interesting. Wait, is it? So we have 51 gravel. Yeah, it's pulling from the backpack. I wasn't even expecting it to do that. But look how nice this makes this. And because of this mode that we have it in, it allows us to place out like this. Of course, the gravel's falling into the holes at the moment, but still, this is going to save me so much time. Now, I think this is going to be the perfect foundation for sort of getting started with this. I don't have a whole lot of gravel, so I've made do, and I've just used regular grass, and I'm going to get this filled back in. But I do want to do like some coarse dirt, I think, around this in the future. Now, this is going to be the actual iron farms location. But I do got to figure out how am I going to fit in a bunch of water wheels into this area? And also, how am I going to build after I place in and get this factory started? Well, usually I like to build out when I'm playing with Create. I like to actually build the farm and then put the building around the farm. And there's a good reason for this, because not always are you going to know how large something is going to actually need to be. And so starting off on a nice little flat area is a really good way of starting out and figuring out how you're going to build. So, speaking of building, I think just actually getting this set up is going to be a good idea. So, first things first, power, and that means water wheels. As of right now, I'm just going to get started with water wheels, and I want to set up about 64 of them, and this should guarantee us about 32,000 SU with 64 water wheels. Now, I know what you're thinking. Chosen, how do you make like 64 water wheels look good? Well, it can be done, but you've got to make sure that whatever you're building, when you do build it, has like some sort of feeling or meaning. So, for example, I plan on building 16 water wheels this way, 16 on top of that, 16 on the side, and 16 on top of this, leaving like a double block gap. So we have 2 blocks up like this, for example, with these girders. And then I'm going to place this right on top. Well, not right here, but right on top of this. There we go. And then continue this. Now, what's going to make this work is we are going to place a water source down the center, and these are going to rotate into each other. And so we are actually sort of concealing the water, which I think is probably the ugliest part of the whole build. But then I'm going to surround it with an actual encasement. So it's going to be sort of industrial feeling. So I've outlined this with a bit of a frame just for looks, honestly. And then on the inside, I think what I'm going to do is barrels. And so long as I can possibly get down here to place these in, this is going to be the hard part. I think I will slip down all the way to the bottom. Yes, unfortunately. We do have to clear out, speaking of the bottom, we have to clear out this bottom section just to make sure that all of this is free, because we do need a place for the water to flow down into. But yeah, placing the water right here is kind of what I want to do. And you can see all of them are going to start spinning slowly, but I do have to get the water underneath every single one of those. And I mean, something like a trapdoor, for example, will definitely work. We just stand right here, lower ourselves down, and then we can start to fill in underneath on all of these. Well, most of them. Oh boy. You know, not always is it a perfect science. It just is what it is, right? Sometimes we just got to figure things out. And you know what? I am going to leave the barrels here, but I think instead of placing them on the barrels, I'm just going to fill them right here, because that keeps the water perfectly seated in this whole setup, and this is going to work a little bit better. And I'm also going to do it on the other side just to make sure it looks nice and even. Ah, that is so much better. Now, as far as water wheels go, I think this is looking pretty good. We can even add a little light source up here on the top, but let's talk about power, because we do need to route this power around. So as of right now, I have chain drives that are delivering this power to the bottom, and then this rotates that direction. And these are technically spinning in opposite directions, which means that a gearbox should be able to connect to these just fine. Just like that. So now both of these points are connected into a single rotation source. But it is moving really slow, so there is a way that we can technically speed it up, and quite easily without using a whole bunch of gear ratioing. And that is by utilizing, now that we have brass set up, a beautiful rotational speed controller. Yes, my beloved. So the rotational speed controller accepts rotation in any side, off the side, or even from the gearbox that is going to be in the top. And we can adjust the speed that it sends to this cogwheel, for example. And so as of right now, it's set to 16. So it's taking a lower speed. I think this is like a rotation speed or RPM of like 8. And it's upgrading it to 16 and sending it up here. But we can send this all the way up to 256, which is the max speed, which is kind of what I want to do. And we can just simply tap into this and send it anywhere we need this power. And this is what's going to make this whole thing so fantastic. Oh, and also, yeah, we can completely change the direction too. So let's say we want it spinning in the opposite direction. We can just swap it between this anytime we need to. So now that we have power, we need to start thinking about, well, how we're going to build this simple iron farm and gravel farm and sand farm. Oh yeah, and also clay farm and flint farm. If we're in an iron farm, everything's got to essentially start with a cobblestone generator. Now, in this pack that I've put together, cobblestone generators no longer require you to set up this monstrosity of a setup using drills and all kinds of other stuff. So instead, we have a single block cobblestone generator, which is really, really nice and really convenient. To be able to make this, though, it does require rotational energy. It may require a bit of this, so it's something we're going to have to play around with, and it is going to be one of the drawbacks of doing it this way. But technically, both methods do really require rotational energy to even power these drills in general. So this is just going to be a nice space saver, because typically cobblestone generators, well, they do take up quite a bit of space. So this is the recipe for it. Not too bad. Mechanical generator. And now we have ourselves a cobblestone generator. Pretty darn cool. So we can place this over here, and let's see, this is where we receive power. So rotational energy is on either side. And then inside of it, we need to tell it, hey, cobblestone is what you are going to be generating. And I think this is like the only thing I have it set to be able to generate. Then from this, let's go ahead and just build a rather long belt line, right? That's going to be about the length of this. And we want this belt line to allow us to understand how we're going to set things up. So first things first, gearboxes are going to be pretty darn important. Right off the bat, we're taking cobblestone and we're going to feed it onto the belt. We then want to crush it off of the belt. I'm going to give this a little bit of space, and then we're going to use vertical gearboxes right here on the side to carry power into some crushing wheels. This is going to be the first operation that happens that is going to convert cobblestone, and it is going to convert it into gravel. And essentially, this is the recipe that's happening down here, cobblestone. Now, this, with the experience nugget, this is technically infested cobblestone, which, by the way, this is a really cool way of generating XP. But we'll disregard. This is just generating gravel. And that's all good and well, but we do want to distribute that gravel down the belt line, and we want to send off some to be processed into iron. And that is actually going to happen over here. And so what we can do is we can take a brass tunnel, and brass tunnels allow us to filter all kinds of stuff, gravel being one of those things we can filter. So if we grab some gravel, which we do have over here, and I place this in the filter, we should be able to choose a distribution mode whenever things start sort of routing, and we give it another place to send to. For example, if I set a belt over here, we now have another slot. And now we have both of those filtered. Those will allow it to send over here and over here, but we got to choose that distribution mode. So we can choose to split, force split, or round robin. Round robin is usually a pretty good idea. That way it sends a stack over here, then it'll send another stack on the next round this way. And it'll keep doing that. But if this side fills up, well, then the only place it can send is going to be this direction anyways. And this is going to be pretty important because we are going to do a trickle down cobblestone generator here. What I should call this is a cobblestone trickle down processor. Now, after this goes through and we have gravel being processed over here, which we'll come back to, we do want to process this further down into sand, for example. And so we do want to capture some of that sand after it is done. So this side, this is going to be processing gravel in whatever way I plan on doing it, probably using a fan and some water. And then this side, we'll take that excess gravel, break it down, but gravel doesn't just turn into sand. So gravel, when processed with the crushing wheel, we have to account for the fact that it's going to produce sand, flint, and also clay balls. Now for these, we definitely want to filter this out, right? We want to send this to some sort of storage. So sand, we definitely want going over here, but also we want to make filter lists that do allow other things to go through here. So for example, we are going to want sand to go here first, and then if there's an overabundance of sand, continue on this way. This is because we are going to want to have some overflow protection, which we're going to get to in a second. So technically all of these output filters, well, we do want to make sure that those output filters, all 3 of them are set to the same filter list. Now, I do think these consume the filter, so you are going to need a filter for each one. You can assign all filters together. So sand, flint, and clay all need to be on an allow list. And then I'm just going to place this in here, and also on the backside. And then over here, we'll just say flint and also clay balls. Perfect. Now on the top, the filter method needs to be preferred nearest. And the cool thing about create is as a thing travels through a belt and it actually goes into the brass tunnel, this is actually not the closest thing that it is going to prefer. The nearest is actually going to be any of the side belts. So in this case, this belt right here is actually the nearest. And so it's going to try and fill this line first. And if this is filled, then it will just continue down the road. And all of these need to be set to prefer nearest. Now, I know I just got all of this set up, but I kind of also want to produce gravel here. And I completely forgot about the need for gravel. So I just need to stretch this out one more. So that way this is going to be another brass tunnel for gravel. And this is actually going to change a little bit of how we had all of these set up before, because these tunnels are all now technically connected in a way and should pass all of their stuff on through. So in this case, we just need a single list filter, I believe, here on the outside. And then we'll just filter all of the same stuff on the inside and make sure these are all set to prefer nearest again. This is starting to look quite nice. All of these materials are going to end up being made. Specifically, iron, though, is one of the primary ones I want. And then also gravel and sand is nice for concrete and many other things. Even making more clay. But this thing will passively produce flint and clay for us, which is going to be nice. So now that we've got all of this done, it's time for us to work on how we're going to process iron. So I think right here will be the one that needs to be processing iron. And so I'm going to remove this belt and instead use a depot. Now this did reset my settings, so I am going to have to go back in, replace the gravel into the setup here, assuming that I didn't just get another flint. There we go. And then make sure this did not change. Round robin is fine. And I'm going to set up a very interesting fan setup here. So the goal is to have a fan that is down here that is blowing into a catalyst that is going to have water in it. And then the depot here is going to output a stack of a material. And then this fan is going to blow and it is going to push up and it is going to produce from that, I believe, just iron, right? Iron nuggets is the only thing that produces. No, that's right. Flint also gets produced in this operation. So yes, we are going to have to either potentially set up a filter that voids flint, or we need to find a way to get flint from here all the way over into our flint storage. So you know what, for right now, I'm not going to worry too much about flint. We're just going to store it in the same barrel as our iron. But the goal then is to collect it into this barrel with another funnel. So that is going to go up, but we need the funnel to be filtered to only pull, or we could say, hey, blacklist gravel. So that way it doesn't actually pick up gravel. It only picks up anything that is not gravel. I think, though, in this case, it might be best to simply filter out or filter for flint and also iron nuggets. And when you're creating these filters, by the way, you can actually drag from JEI if you want. So I don't have any iron nuggets on me at the moment, but I can drag them in. And now we have this set. And so this will only accept those iron nuggets. So fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and set my catalyst. And so now we have this water catalyst. We do need to make sure we can get down here to the fan. So that way, when we hook all of this rotational energy together, we'll make sure that this fan gets turned on. Now, since these items are also going to be flowing up, we probably want to place a trap door directly on top of this to make sure it catches those items. So that way that when those items are processed and finished, they go into the funnel instead of just flying up in the air somewhere. Now, as far as carrying the power goes, I've just routed the power all the way over here, just using a shaft. And this is spinning up the belt. It happened to be just in the right direction, which is perfect. And you can see right here, the crushing wheels do go in the correct direction. But I do need to be able to power these belts. And this is where I can, again, use the transmission chains, be able to connect these up, and that will get that transferring that rotation right into these barrels. Power the fan, I've routed down here into a gearbox, into an encased chain drive, which leads into the fan. And that's blowing right up here like I need. Now we're almost there. We just got to power the mechanical generator. So I'm going to carry some power over to here. And that is now generating all the cobble we need. We just send it out like this, that is going to process it up and start sending it out. And we can limit how much. We can say exactly 16 at a time. That's usually a pretty good value, and it'll make this process go, I think, a bit faster. And then before I forget, I better put these andesite funnels in here just to make sure it catches all of this stuff. Otherwise, we're going to have a massive mess like this. Now, most of this is working, but our actual iron production part, well, that is starting to struggle, and I can tell that this design may not actually work. There is a simple fix for this. All we have to do is basically replace the barrel with a chest. This might seem kind of weird, but if we do place a chest in here, it does allow us to drop this whole setup down one, so that way this doesn't get backed up and can constantly dump, and then we can use a brass funnel facing upwards like so and filter that, and that should be able to collect all of the stuff. And because a double chest is connected together, this allows us to extend the reach just one block further, which is all we really need. Then we can place in the filter and turn this bad boy back on, and we should start to see processed iron and flint inside of this container. And there we go. Beautiful. Also, by the way, underneath the depot, I placed in a chute just to make sure this dropped it a little bit further down and just lowered the whole system like I mentioned before. Now, typically sand would end up being the byproduct and you'd end up producing a lot of excess stuff. But in this case, I actually want to take any excess sand that's not going into storage, and I want to use it to convert it also into more clay, so that way we have an abundance of clay for building. So to do this, I have this filter right here, filtering sand and clay balls, so that way those end up going onto the depot, and then any excess sand is going to work its way down here, and in the same setup that we're actually using for our iron, I'm also going to collect and have that sand converted. Clay is going to be the only byproduct that gets produced, and so clay should start building up as soon as I turn everything back on here. And we're really making this optimal here. I think the only way we can make this even better is by making sure we were using a full chute here. And I'm trying to think, is there anything? I mean, I guess flint could end up being thrown out. As of right now, I'm also seeing clay getting thrown out, but I'm hoping that that will be able to handle itself now that we have a much better chute. Now we get to start actually upgrading our containers. So as of right now, I have some brass upgrades, and we really need to do it specifically for this chest as of right now, because this is producing flint, and a lot of flint is just getting backed up. So if we upgrade this container, it can hold a lot more stuff, but I really want to get rid of all of this flint and compact up the iron nuggets automatically. So the compacting upgrade, definitely going to be the thing that we want in here. We want to set this to an allow filter, set it to iron, and then this is going to automatically compact all of our iron nuggets. But I do want to get rid of the flint. So to be able to get rid of the flint, I'm going to take a brass funnel, set this over here, set it to flint only, and then to void it, because I can't afford a void upgrade at the moment for the barrel, I'm just going to void it into a cauldron at the moment. And into the cauldron, I'm going to put a bucket of lava, and this will allow it to automatically just void it by dropping it in. And so all we should be left with is just simply iron ingots being built up in here. Now for the other containers, I do want to also upgrade them. I'm going to upgrade this chest. All of these barrels can get a brass upgrade, which will allow it to store quite a bit more. Not to mention, it gives us the ability to make stack upgrades for this bad boy. Now the same thing needs to happen on here to catch any loose ends. And so to do this, I'm going to take a cauldron, place it down, give it some lava, and then we'll just use a brass funnel to take the items off the belt if it does make it out here and void it. This is our void belt line system off the end. And like I said, this is just going to catch any excess that starts to build up, because we really just want this to be something that generates over time. This is really a set it and forget it sort of setup. Now, speaking of set it and forget it, there's some really cool things you can do with the sophisticated storage barrels, right? So instead of using item frames to identify what is on everything, you can go into the settings and then item display settings. And then over here, we actually have some ways to show. So for example, I can have it show on the right side of the chest, and I can click what I actually want it to show. And that should show that iron is right here on the side of the chest. And the same goes for the barrels and all of these different things. We just basically say, hey, show that on the inventory, and it's going to show it there for us. And you know what? I think that's pretty cool. And so I call this a pretty big success. This right here is just passively producing building materials that I need, and that's exactly what this is for. And we could potentially utilize some of this cool stuff in the future, but I think that is for its own separate factory. Now, there is more to this factory that we are going to be building within the next few episodes, so definitely be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and well, give this video, guys, a huge thumbs up. That also includes building all of this fancy stuff. We got to build a building here. It's going to be really, really nice. But guys, if you did enjoy, like I said, click that subscribe button, and well, without further ado, it's time for me to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that huge thanks is going to go out to Caboose. Thank you so much for your amazing support in choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting my videos in one of the best ways possible. Thank you so very much. And guys, I appreciate all of you watching. I'll see you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching.